Greetings, dear viewer, and welcome to my own personal top 10 best albums of 2024 list. I have a lot of subcategories, honourable mentions, and heck, even a whole mini award ceremony to get through. So I will have timestamps on screen and in the video description below. With all that being said, allow me to dive straight into the rules. First things first, and arguably most important, this list is entirely my own personal opinions. I'm not here to argue what album is objectively the best one of the year. I'm just here to share my thoughts on some of my favourites. As is the case every year, I spent way too long overthinking this list. So just know that by this time next year, heck, this time next week, this entire list could have shuffled round a dozen or so times. I'm even second guessing it to this moment, but no, I'm sticking with it. Right. The only real rules I have are basically just exclusions, as in albums that don't qualify. No live albums, no re-releases, whether they be anniversary editions, or new pressings, or super deluxe 3-disc anniversary editions, or super mega ultra awesome anniversary collector's set. No greatest hits compilations, because I mean, come on, that's just cheating. I'm still so sorry, The Killers. No soundtracks either, because it's hardly fair to put a jukebox mixtape and a top 10 albums of the year list. Although if I were to allow them, the Arcane Season 2 soundtrack would easily be number 1. And a new rule for this year, no albums that technically released several years ago but only just got a physical release in 2024. At least here in New Zealand, we only just got the 2 Minecraft soundtracks and Joe's Decide on CD. Oh, and no EPs, because they get their own little section at the very end. Same with mini albums. And one more unique exclusion is Blink-182's One More Time Part 2. Because despite having Part 2 in the title, it was only released as an expanded version of last year's One More Time, which was already on my top 10 list. So, sorry about that, Mark and Travis. Not you, Tom. I still haven't forgiven you for what you said about the cancelled Christchurch show. Cool concert, though. Okay, that's already more rambling than I'm comfortable with, so allow me to jump right into the honourable mentions, of which I have 2 subcategories. The first honourable mention subcategory I like to affectionately refer to as albums by bands I don't normally listen to, but who put out a great album in 2024 that I enjoy listening to from start to finish, despite not having any individual songs that stand out to me. Those being Foster the People's Paradise State of Mind, Kasabian's Happenings, Travis's LA Times, and Snow Patrol's Forest is the Path. I like to play the whole record from start to finish in the background, but if you asked me to pick a favourite song from them, I couldn't tell ya. And now for the second subcategory of honourable mentions, the more traditional honourable mentions. Albums that I really liked and have several fantastic standout songs, but just narrowly didn't make the cut. One Republic's Artificial Paradise. Just good, fun, radio-friendly pop music. I'll admit seeing them live probably went a long way into convincing me to pick this album up, and yeah, I enjoy it. Vampire Weekend's Only Above Us. I thought for sure this would make the list, but when I really started to think about it, I realised that aside from the pre-release tracks, which are like my favourites, I don't really seek out any other songs on the album. It is still really good though. The Libertines, All Quiet on the Eastern Esplanade. This is the cool alternate cover. I love several of the songs on this album, and I wanted so desperately to put it on the list, but I started questioning whether it would hold my interest in future years. But this is like the one where even now, I listened to it a couple of nights ago, and I'm like, how is this not on my list? So honestly, by the time this video is done, this will probably be the actual number 10. Bon Jovi's Forever, not to be confused with Cher's Forever, or Sam Cullen's Forever, which also released this year. Anyway, Legendary is pretty cool. Living Proof is one of the best Bon Jovi songs. The rest are either alright or forgettable. In a quieter year, this could have been number 10. Certainly more enjoyable than 2020, but honestly, if you ask me, peak modern day Bon Jovi has to go to This House Is Not For Sale from 2016. That is like the epitome of old man Bon Jovi. It's great. Sia's Reasonable Woman. I preferred the original album cover. This one took ages to come out, and I know Sia's become a bit of a cool to hate on her kind of artist, and she really doesn't help her case with her social media posts, but I love her voice. And it's so nice to have a proper Sia album for the first time in years, with some absolute standout bangers like Little Wing, Dance Alone, Gimme Love, all with her traditional powerhouse vocals. Given that this released so early in the year, it was a contender for most of the year, but it kinda got overshadowed by another pop artist that released an album around the same time. More on them later. Floyd Marsden's Disco Lizards hasn't received a physical release yet. A solid album, very Alex Turner inspired, without being too derivative. Quite a unique sound you don't often hear from Kiwi artists. Aside from the subject matter of one of the songs being not quite to my liking, the other 95% of the album is great. Sticking with New Zealand musicians, Bad Schematics' first full-length album, Collide. Rising from the ashes of the Wake Up Band, Bad Schematics have made a seriously impressive impression on the New Zealand rock scene. Honestly, I love this album. Cry Yourself Awake, classic. No complaints, other than, oi, Caleb, I thought you said the CD was almost finished like half a year ago. What's going on, man? Oh, and I suppose I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Voodoo Blues Dead End Rodeo. Although in this case, there's actually 2 songs I actively dislike, which is new for them. But the majority of the songs on there were already released prior to the album's inception, like EPs or singles, or B-sides. So that just means that the rest of the on-album tracks I haven't had much of a chance to listen to. Still got that great signature sound, though. Oh, and insert whatever Stray Kids album you want here. Everything they released this year was pretty good, but nothing matched up to Rockstar in my opinion. Okay, that does it for honourable mentions now, right? No, because even this late in the game, I'm still swapping and chopping and changing things, so I have 2 more top-tier honourable mentions. These 2 were both on the top 10 at some point, and just didn't make the cut. But they could easily be number 10 any day of the week. Blossom's 5th album, Gary, is almost a return to form for them. A couple of my close friends and I absolutely adored their first 2 albums. Heck, we could almost be considered one of those obnoxious, we liked them before they got famous people, but no, we weren't that early. Then they released their 3rd album and all but abandoned their unique synthy sound and went on to create some of the most generic, alternative, crap sounding music, honestly. It just seems so uninspired and unappealing to us. So of course that was the album that garnered them critical acclaim and mainstream success. Then Ribbon Round the Bomb was just, well, I mean, it exists. So consider me surprised when I didn't hate the pre-release singles for this album, and then when it actually came out, I quite enjoyed it. And what's this? Do I hear the slightest hint of synthesizers in the mix? Maybe there's some hope for Mumford & Sons yet. And lucky last, an absolute no-brainer, Songs of a Lost World by The Cure. This is easily their best album in the last 3 or 4 releases, which a lot of major music publications like to stress, their best album in over a decade. Man, this is their only album in over a decade. But it is good, and it does deserve the praise it's getting. I initially had this kind of quite high on my list as like a de facto choice, until I realised the whole album kind of sounds exactly the same. And that's not a negative, mind you, just an observation, and I'm pretty sure that that was an intentional creative choice to make an album that feels like one cohesive, audible journey, like one big, long song. Then I realised, because of that, I don't really have any favourite tracks. So the only time I'll listen to it is when I'm actually in the mood to listen to the entire album start to finish. Which again, isn't a bad thing, just personal mood. Right, at last, time for my personal, subjective top 10 favourite best albums of 2024. Not including EPs. Number 10 of my best albums of 2024 list goes to Moon Music by Coldplay. I'm pretty mixed on Coldplay. They have numerous undeniable hits to their name, and I enjoy most of them. Although when it comes to albums, X and Y is the only release by Coldplay where I love more than 2 songs off it. Yep. Every one of their albums has just 1 or 2 songs that I actually like. Yes, including Everyday Life. So with that being said, does that mean Moon Music breaks the mold? Kinda. Feels Like I'm Falling in Love is kinda like their last album's Higher Power, a basic radio-friendly jam. I Am a Mountain is a lot of fun. All My Love is cheesy, but I admire the themes. But what really stands out to me, and is the main reason why I put this album over Blossoms, The Cure, or The Libertines, We Pray is one of, if not, my song of the year. The instrumentation and, oh, that bass! I normally hate bass-heavy songs that obnoxious neighbours or 2 a.m. drivers like to blast from their car speakers while people are trying to sleep. But man, We Pray has some serious beats. It's so good. I went out of my way to go to a local cinema to attend the pre-release album listening event thing just so I could hear this song through the speakers. It wasn't loud enough. Now, there's like 5 versions of the song that they released, including a Be Our Guest version where you can like add your own verse, and they actually ran like competitions so that local artists could get up on stage and perform with them, which I think was really cool. The version that's on the album's fine enough, but my personal favourite has to be the version featuring Tini, Tini. Her voice is beautiful, even though I can't understand her language, obviously. It's just, oh, it's so captivating, and I wish I could have seen them live this year. But man, screw those $380 tickets. Ticketmaster are scumbags and can suck my... Anyway, I forgive them for releasing a deluxe version mere days after their album's release, because it was mostly just alternate takes of tracks on the album. Still bummed there was no CD for it though. Moving right along to number 9, Rosie by Rose, or at least that's how a friend of mine who's addicted to K-pop says her name is pronounced. It could just be Rose. Yeah, I had a feeling this would make the list, which is why I waited so late to finalise the top 10, because this is a December release. Man, I really hope the new Stray Kids album isn't too good, otherwise I have to do this all again. It's really good. But I'm not doing this list again. A few weeks ago I had a random music video recommendation pop up for me, which read APT featuring Bruno Mars. Oh, I like Bruno Mars enough, and it's been ages since I've seen anything new from him, aside from Silk Sonic, so I'll give it a go. And what can I say? It annoyed the absolute crap out of me before immediately getting stuck in my head and going on to become one of my most played songs of the year after just a few weeks. Much like Bastille's Pompeii, Maroon 5's Maps, or pretty much all of One Direction, a song that initially annoyed me was just so catchy that I ended up warming up to it. Now, I've heard the complaint from music critics that it uses the exact same melody as so many generic pop songs, but hey, as someone who's still warming up to the pop genre, sometimes when the instrumentation is good and the vocals are on point, catchy is catchy. Now, you might be wondering, Dirvinator, is this whole list going to be just albums with one standout song so strong that they make it into your top 10? Well, no, not necessarily, although I have to admit, it is my favourite song of the album. I would have liked a couple more upbeat songs like it, but aside from like the chorus on maybe 2 tracks, it's very much a slow jams record. A lot of low-key, quieter pop songs held up by remarkable vocals. That's the real reason I feel so confident putting this in my top 10. Rosé's voice is so good that I'm sure I will keep listening to this for years to come. Also, I didn't know until very recently that she was actually born in New Zealand, raised in Australia with Korean parents, and is a member of Blackpink, and is one of the most followed social media people in all of South Korea. I didn't know all that till recently, so hey, thanks Bruno Mars for getting me into a cool album. Let's keep that artist unexpectedly being a New Zealander theme going with my number 8 spot, Nights Like This by Kaylee Bell. And yes, that is a signed album you're seeing. If you asked me last year who Kaylee Bell was, I could not have told you. But I do know who Navy is, who also signed the album. Navy is an insanely talented New Zealand musician who moved to the UK several years ago and has been occasionally releasing the occasional bop over the last few years. And right when I needed it the most, when dealing with heavy grief, a duet with Navy and Kaylee Bell released called Life is Tough, But So Am I. And it was exactly what I needed to hear. Then, it turns out, my mother knows Kaylee Bell and is quite a fan. And then it turns out they're touring New Zealand. So we went to see them live, and Palmerston North of all places. And that's where I got them to sign my CD, which I pre-ordered from JB Hi-Fi, just saying. Anyways, this is a country pop album with a couple of covers of iconic classics in the genre, but all of the original songs are just as good. Like, I enjoyed all of this before seeing her live. Because, you know, sometimes when you're mixed on a band, but you see them live and it makes you love them even more. But in this case, no. First time I listened to it, I'm like, this is great. This is fun. I like this. So, yeah, easily one of my favourites of the year. There isn't a skippable track on here. I'm almost tempted to bump it up a spot, but no, I'm sticking with my list the way it is. Highlights include Take It to the Highway, Boots and All, the title track, Good Things, the song with Navy, heck, pretty much all of them. I guess the only reason this Practically Perfect album isn't higher on my list is because I'm not the world's biggest country fan. Don't get me wrong, I like the genre enough. I'm never one of those people that hate on it just for the sake of hating. But it's never my go-to genre, you know? You gotta be in the mood for it. Speaking of gotta be in the mood for it, my number 7 pick epitomizes that mindset. And that has to be Warp Speed Warriors by Dragon Force. Yep, this one surprised me too when I was putting my list together and realised I enjoyed this more than Bon Jovi and the like. But hey, what can I say? When I am in that rare mood to listen to some speed metal or power metal, Dragon Force is the only band I turn to. Though I am open for some recommendations. What can I say about this one that's different to every other one of their albums? It's a little bit more sci-fi rather than fantasy, which I suppose isn't saying much considering the themes of their previous album, but hey, that's actually a good point. The main reason this made the list is because it is the first new Dragon Force album that I have genuinely liked a lot since I first got into them with 2014's Maximum Overdrive, which is still my favourite album by them. Controversial choice, I know, but wait, 2014? Has it really been a decade already? And that's not to say they haven't put out any great stuff in that time, far from it. But as a whole, Reaching Into Infinity didn't really have any standout tracks for me, and admittedly released in peak concert going season when I was going to a lot of indie and alternative bands, so it wasn't really what I was listening to at the time. And Extreme Power Metal, unfortunately, released at a time where I was living somewhere where music was not allowed, fun was not allowed, heck, breathing wasn't allowed. Anyway, despite releasing in 2023, Doomsday Party was a ridiculously catchy way to kick off this album cycle. And despite some cheesy gimmick songs like The Tale of Draco and Power of the Triforce, which is still good by the way, I actually found myself listening to this one quite a lot throughout 2024. With unique sounding tracks like Space Marine Corps and even managing to make a Taylor Swift track listenable, I finally have another album from a metal band that I'd almost given up hope for, just like last year's Avenged Sevenfold. Although I don't think Dragon Force got into NFTs. Yes, a lot of parallels between this year and last year's list videos. Plus, some of you regular viewers can pretty much predict when a band's new album is going to make my list, judging by previous years. But what I bet you didn't predict is a previous album of the year winning band not even making my top 5. Case in point, Bastille presents Ampersand, styled as the and symbol, comes in at number 6. This one's a bit different because it's technically not a Bastille album. It's more frontman Dan Smith doing some low-key experimental sounds while collaborating with a myriad of uber-talented musicians whose names you and I will never know. Conceptually, it's a lot like Hayley Williams' Petals for Armor experiment, only this actually sounds good. It'd be like if that was called Paramore Presents Petals for Armor. But it's not a solo album, and yet it's not a fully fledged Bastille album. So yeah, whatever the title fits. You gotta have the band name attached to it in order for it to sell well, I guess. Otherwise you end up like poor Marcus Mumford's album, his solo record which barely anyone listened to. You should listen to it. Damn it, I'm rambling again. Look, this isn't an easy listen in the sense that it's nothing like you've come to expect from a traditional Bastille album. But those of us die-hard fans that have deep dived into the depths of their music catalogue and dug up some obscure other people's heartache rarities or the Dan solo projects will be right at home. Essentially, this is a step up from a stripped back acoustic album, but is definitely less pop rocky and more singer-songwriter musing over seriously thought-provoking concepts and ideas. It's a very lyrically dense album, best listened to through surround sound earphones. Despite being a not quite this, not quite that kind of album, I just love Dan Smith's voice so much that I still managed to find a lot of enjoyment listening to this contemplative form of musical expression. If that sounds a bit pretentious, then it probably is, but I like it. The theme of every track being a something plus something, X and Y, this and that, is more than just a gimmick. It provides gateways to a lot of, sorry to sound pretentious again, but really interesting ideas and music. I just like how it sounds, okay? There's a few tracks on here that resonate strongly with me, and Blue Sky and the Painter is one of the best songs of the year. Moving on to the top 5. How is this the only straight-up rock album on this year's list? Oh well, call it pop rock, punk rock, alternative rock, whatever you like. Number 5 goes to Alkaline Trio's Blood, Hair and Eyeballs. Oh. I guess it's because all of my favourite rock bands released their albums last year. All Time Low, Fall Out Boy, Paramore, You Me at 6, Taking Back Sunday, Blink-182. Oh, speaking of Blink-182, I make no attempt at keeping secret the fact that I love the Matt Skiba era of Blink. 9 was the album that finally got me into Blink-182, and is still my favourite album by them. Don't shoot me. And I adore California as well. So when I heard that Matt went straight on back to creating a new Alkaline Trio album, I thought to myself, well, if I like his voice so much in Blink-182, I should probably check out his main band, right? And my goodness, they are so good. Much like 9 was my gateway into Blink, this album is what got me into Alkaline Trio, and I have subsequently gone back and gladly listened to a lot of their previous discography. There's a lot to get through, and I haven't got through all of it, but from what I've heard, I love it. This album is no exception to that greatness. I love so many of the songs. The vocals and instruments are exactly my kind of music, and I get genuine serotonin when I listen to it. Meet Me has been stuck in my head all year, because yes, this released in January, and I'm still jamming it. It's that good. I can't wait to get around to listening to all their albums. My 4th favourite album was actually in the number 3 spot through most of the year until quite recently. It was a big surprise for me because I had no expectations from this band. Heck, it was the first time I had brought one of their albums just for myself, rather than a joint present for me and my ex back in the day. But given what happened at the start of this year, I knew from my very first listen that this record was going to be special to me. This entry is going to get quite heavy, so please feel free to take a break, grab some water, it's all good. My number 4 best album of the year is Loss of Life by MGMT. Loss of Life. On January 5th, just before midnight, my little brother Jaden passed away at age 25. It wasn't entirely unexpected for our family, but as this album so accurately points out, still nothing prepares you for loss of life. The last time an album felt so deeply personal to me, like the band were literally singing about my life in that moment, was in 2015 when Mumford & Sons released Wilder Mind. And I'd be lying if I said that every song on here was thematically relevant, but the ones that are just super impactful to me in a way few songs are. Putting aside those personal connections, this album is great, combining psychedelic noise with classical instruments and old-timey sounds to create a beautiful collage of music. Their previous album, Little Dark Age, was my first MGMT album, and though I didn't think much of it as a whole, aside from the 4 pre-release tracks, the title track is phenomenal. So this time around, I truly wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. But upbeat songs like People in the Streets, Mother Nature, Dancing in Babylon, combined with Nothing Changes, I Wish I Was Joking, and I cannot give enough praise to the 2 title tracks. Loss of Life Part 2 opening the album with a beautifully grainy retro sound with a 14th century spoken word poem transposed over top of it sets a perfect scene for the album to follow. And Loss of Life, the closing track, is a musical triumph. Whether I'm listening to the CD on my speaker system or headphones, earphones, my crappy one-sided phone speaker, it sounds so nice to me. A feeling of nostalgia, melancholy, pain, and hope. This album is... yeah, it helped me through a lot, and even without that element, it's still a heck of a record. Like I said, it was my number 3 for most of the year. So, with that being said, What's Up Next was originally my second favourite of the year, before quite recently getting bumped down to my third favourite. Who could it be? Well, hot off her performance in this year's cinematic disaster Argyle, it's none other than Dua Lipa with her album Radical Optimism. Which album cover do you like more, the shark or the butt? I like the shark. I'm surprised she hasn't put out an expanded edition of this one yet, given that her previous 2 albums had deluxe editions at launch and then went on to have another expanded release later on in the year. So stay tuned for radical-er optimism. Okay, but seriously, I've said it numerous times before, it takes a lot for a straight-up pop album to appeal to me. You've gotta have powerful vocals and some sick beats, or be ridiculously annoyingly catchy. And what could I say? No one does it better than Dua Lipa. Well, maybe Ava Max, but that's besides the point. This was another early year release. I didn't listen to any of the pre-release singles for whatever reason, but I knew that it would be of high quality, given the success and enjoyability of her previous album, Future Nostalgia. And I wasn't disappointed. And in truth, it's this album's fault that I didn't get to give Sia's Reasonable Women much of a chance, because they both released around the same time, and although Sia's album has some incredible belters singing her heart and lungs out, Dua kept me coming back with some of those infectiously funky beats. My absolute favourites being End of an Era and These Walls. Clean version, of course. And I really don't have much else to say about it. It's just a really solid and fun pop record. And I really, really hope I can afford to see her next year. $300 resale tickets. What? And now for the biggest and best surprise of the year. The album that snuck its way in, pushing MGMT and Dua Lipa down the spot and coming ever so close to that coveted best album of the year, in my opinion. Nevertheless, a worthy runner-up. My second favourite album of 2024 is From Zero by Linkin Park. I'll admit it, before this year I wouldn't have called myself a Linkin Park fan. Sure, like every other kid in the early 2000s, I loved In the End, What I've Done, New Divide, and Numb. Heck, I even liked Heavy from their last album. But it wasn't until 2022, when I did my monthly album haul video series, that I bought my first Linkin Park album, that being the 20th anniversary edition of their debut, Hybrid Theory, which I enjoyed quite a bit, but for whatever reason it just didn't stick with me. Then Meteora had its 20th anniversary release, which has to be one of the worst or dumbest decisions made for a CD collection, because they put out a whole album of unreleased demos from that era, all touched up and remastered like they were official new songs, released them, but not as part of the 3-disc CD set, only on disc 6 of the vinyl collector's edition? Why would you put essentially a whole album's worth of new songs featuring Chester in his prime as part of an exclusive 4 vinyl 6 CD collector's set and not the CD release? It is baffling. Anyway, ramble over. It wasn't until they put out their essentially greatest hits release, Paper Cuts, earlier this year, that I became truly hooked on them. This was a perfect example of a greatest hits collection being a gateway into a band's wider music catalogue. It's right up there with Believers Never Die, May Death Never Stop You, and Direct Hits. Sorry again, Rebel Diamonds. So, just like the rest of the world, I was equally as surprised to see that the bands were teasing an upcoming live stream and hyping up their fans. I just so happened to have that day off and was awake at the time, so I tuned in to that live stream and I got to witness live on screen the debut of new material featuring new vocalist Emily Armstrong. She was a perfect fit for the band, and I couldn't be happier for them. It goes without saying that Chester will never be replaced. No, this is something new, starting from zero, if you will. The first song they dropped, The Emptiness Machine, quickly became one of my favourite songs of the year. Then every other track they dropped leading up to the album's release was just as good, banger after banger, and then the album itself came out, and yes, this is exactly what I was hoping for as a new Linkin Park fan. I love every track on this album. Heck, I was even listening to, I think it was Stained, and I remember thinking to myself, wow, even the worst song on this album is amazing. And the next time I heard it, I'm like, wait, what? I thought this was the worst song on the album? It's just kind of like that, where like every time I think there's a song that's not as good, it goes on to be one of my favorites. So yeah, I love it. I love the sounds, the vocals, both old and new. It all just works for me. It just sucks that a few low-life dropkicks want to get a few clicks by capitalizing on fake drama. I deleted another massive page-and-a-half ramble here because it just devolved into me ranting about my thoughts, feelings, and opinions on stuff that isn't really relevant to this video. And it just, like I said, it just turned into a long-winded straw man argument. So, I love this album. I'm happy being a new Linkin Park fan. Screw ARTV. Moving right along. Alright, folks, here it is. My album of the year. Sure, I could argue it's tied with Linkin Park. Just like the last 5 or so years, I always seem to have two albums competing neck and neck for the top spot. But this time, I cannot deny that this is my definitive favourite record released this year. This is it. My number one, bestest, favouriteest album of 2024 is Katy Perry's 143. No, obviously I'm joking. Eesh, what a travesty. I think we all know that it will take an awful lot for a pop album to top one of these lists. No, as a surprise to absolutely no one, my favourite album of 2024 was Clancy by 21 Pilots. Where do I begin? Well, I suppose I'll start with being honest about the pre-release. Unlike Shy Away and Choker, or even Jumpsuit and Nico and the Niners, Overcompensate and Next Semester really didn't do it for me. I don't know, on their own they just seems pretty plain to me. So I wasn't particularly hyped for the album. I was mostly sure I would like it because, well, I like all their albums, but I wasn't like riding high on the hype like I was for Trench and Scaled and Icy. But when it finally came out, when they did that music video live stream, when I finally got my hands on it, I was immediately transported back to 2018, to better times. Welcome back to Trench indeed. Let's touch on the less important stuff to me. Lore-wise, this is great. It's crazy how blatant and out there it is. Literally naming the album after Clancy, the titular protagonist of their background story they've been telling over the last few albums. And yo, when the Bishop comes out and quotes Heavy Dirty Soul, then follows it up with, "Hello, Clancy." Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Musical moment of the year right there. Kendrick v. Drake got nothing on this. My jaw literally hit the floor when I first heard it. It was hype. As for the songs themselves, 21 Pilots, to me, are one of my favourite bands. As such, their albums are subject to my utmost scrutiny. To put it simply, much like Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco, Bastille, and All Time Low, every one of their releases is like my favourite thing ever, and I treat every song as its own experience. And I'm sure that every band, musician, and artist around the world would love for that to be the case with all their albums for all of their fans. But honestly, as I've pointed out several times in this very video, sometimes an album is just an album. Or sometimes just certain songs stand out to you. Clancy isn't one of those albums. Just like Vessel, just like Blurry Face, just like Trench, Scaled and Icy, Heathens, Level of Concern, The Line. Each song is special to me, and I love every song on this album. Sure, Lavish is a bit cringe, Snapback can bug me at times, and the random silent gap in the middle of Paladin Strait's unnecessary, but even then, I love every song, every track. While bands like Linkin Park can release a phenomenal album that sounds quite samey with the odd slow song, Tyler and Josh have a gift and seem to be deliberately crafting albums that are instrumentally consistent but musically diverse. I love it. Navigating is my song of the year. Midwest Indigo, Routines in the Night, Vignette, At the Risk of Feeling Dumb, all greatest hits contenders. I was so wrong about Navigating and Next Semester. When listened to as part of the album as a whole, they are just pure perfection. Paladin Straight, oh, beautiful. Musically, lore-wise, perfect album closer. My only potentially controversial opinion is I personally prefer the single version of The Craving over Jenna's version. Sorry. Man, biggest regret of the year. I wish more than anything I could have afforded to go and see them live in Auckland. Much like Paramore last year, I just missed out. Being broke sucks. But hey, at least some of my dear friends got to see them for the first time, and I have been to the Trench tour, so holding that close to my heart. But they played Migraine and Tear in My Heart this time. Also, not to mention, this Dima Notebook edition of the album is perfect for any fan. Whether you're invested in the lore or not, it's just, it is so very, very cool. They sold out in the US and the UK and Australia, because of course New Zealand wasn't going to get one, but thankfully, after I got the basic CD, I managed to find one in Canada for sale, so thank you, Canada. Although I then found out you can literally see all the contents of the book on a website, which I'll link below. Totally worth it. This is the kind of collector's stuff I love. And there you have it. My top 10 best albums of 2024. Everybody's different, everybody has their own musical taste, so please feel free to leave your recommendations in the comments below. I love pop rock and a bit of alternate indie in there, but you know, I'm open to any genre, so yeah, recommend me your albums. Now, we are far from done, so I will do my best to make this quick. At least that's what I wrote down in my script, but this was literally the halfway point of my script, so yeah. I did the same thing last year, where I gave out a couple of quick awards and shout-outs at the end of the video, but I somehow managed to keep it under 5 minutes then, which I've clearly failed at, judging by the runtime of this video. Yeesh. I hope people stick around. I'll be interested to see who makes it to the end of the video. Because I have a handful of awards to give out, and, of course, the EP shout-outs, which, I mean, come on, that's basically a top 10 list of its own. Let's start off with the awards. Hello, and welcome to the Dirvinator Music Awards, I guess. We've got some repeated categories from last year, and also some new awards to give out. So, let's crack on with some of the regulars. First up, the award for most releases in 1 year. Classic rock bands seem to love putting out remixes, live albums, compilations, and the like. This year was no exception. Def Leppard had 2 last year and 2 this year, along with Blur, The Cure, Travis, Green Day, Linkin Park, Dua Lipa, and Stray Kids, obviously, all had multiple releases this year, but the undeniable winner has to go to the legendary Fiona's Spiral. Fiona put out, get this, a whopping 9 releases in 2024. 4 albums, 4 EPs, and a mixtape. What a machine! If you like lo-fi, psychedelic, ethereal noise sounds with the occasional 2002 Ratchet & Clank soundtrack vibe, then definitely check out her SoundCloud. I don't really have a definitive winner for the Best Album Cover award like I did last year. I suppose Warp Speed Warriors and From Zero's alternate album art look pretty cool, and not just because it's green. If that were the case, I would have given it to Brat. But the two that stood out the most to me would have to be Paradise State of Mind and Dead End Rodeo, for both being beautiful paintings, actual art. Unlike the worst album cover of the year award, Tears for Fears' Songs for a Nervous Planet. What is this AI-generated slop? Oh, I'm sorry, enhanced with AI. What is this AI-enhanced slop? Now, this is not to say all AI is bad, although AI art is often quite unethical. It can be used effectively to an extent. Heck, if you want an example of it being used effectively to enhance an already existing image, just take a look at last year's Best Album Cover winner. I had no idea this even had any AI elements to it when I made the video last year, because there's no janky geometry or extra fingers. It wasn't until the artist himself actually told me, I'm like, oh wow. And that's because it was already pre-existing art, which I guess then had AI expand upon it, adding layers to the backgrounds. Not this sunflower growing out of an astronaut garbage. And that's to say nothing of the quality of the album itself. What a weird release. 4 new tracks and the rest are just live versions of the hits. What is this, a Crush 40 album? Next, the oh, that came out this year award has a few notable contenders. I Don't Know How But They Found Me, The Ghost Club, Lindsay Sterling, although I can kind of forgive those ones because they didn't get CD releases in my country. But the winner has to go to Imagine Dragons. I am consistently surprised when I remember that Loom came out this year. Only 9 tracks, and they're just so forgettable. And that's coming from someone who isn't an Imagine Dragons hater. I normally love every second album, but this one is such a nothing burger. Now, it wasn't bad enough to be a disappointment. No, that award could go to several contenders, like the first album I bought this year, Green Day's Saviors, just didn't appeal to me at all as much as their previous release, Father of All, which I will constantly defend, although very recently there is a song that's kind of worming its way into my head. I don't know what the name of the song is, though. I think it's Bobby Socks, but it's one of them. What else was disappointing? Zed had a pretty cool Muse feature on one of their songs, and then the album came out and it just turned out to be annoying noise. Katy Perry is probably most people's pick because, wow, there are several multi-million view videos about it up on YouTube. I liked her last album, Smile, enough to want to give this one a chance. But lyrically, it's flat, and musically, it's so plain, borderline boring, so basic and uninspired. I couldn't believe that this was a real album. Still, Gimme Gimme and I'm His, He's Mine are catchy enough, and I think Wonder and Has a Heart is cute. Amy Shark and Post Malone both failed to make an impression in their chosen genres this year, at least to me. Amy cancelled her New Zealand shows and then went on to release her least exciting album yet. Like, there's not a track on here where I'm like, yeah, I'll listen to that outside of the album. And Post Malone dove headfirst into the genre of country and proceeded to release a very by-the-numbers album jam-packed with irrelevant features. Beyonce puts it to shame. But the real loser here, and my pick for the most disappointing album of the year award, goes to Model by Wallows. What a snooze fest. One of the last things I ever bought my ex was a bunch of CDs, including a couple of Wallows albums, because she got to see them when they came to New Zealand. And because other bands that we used to listen to together before we split, like Vampire Weekend, The Libertines, MGMT, still appealed to me, I thought, hey, I'll give Wallows a go. Every time I listen to it, I feel nothing. Musically bland, lyrically forgettable. I can't even remember a single lyric. There's just nothing here for me. If you like it, awesome. I'm so happy for you. Do you want my CD? Right! Now, for some new awards. The nominees for Album I genuinely enjoyed listening to all the way through from start to finish, but never had time to properly dedicate to thinking about it any further. Basically, albums I did put on several times and did like, but not enough to make it into my honourable mentions at the start of the video award are Billie Eilish's Hit Me Hard and Soft, Kings of Leon's Can We Please Have Fun, Alien Ant Farm's Mantras, Spicy's NSFW, Zane's Room Under the Stairs, and Shawn Mendes's Shawn. Very creative title. Each one of these albums I enjoyed listening to from start to finish, but like I said, not enough to stand out to me like some of my actual honourable mentions like Foster the People, Voodoo Blue, that sort of thing. You can pick a winner that lot. What's your favourite? Who am I kidding? It's probably Billie Eilish. What? Dirvinator? No Brat? No Brat. Next award, Best Physical Release. Travis came so close with LA Times Deluxe Edition with this beautiful hardcover. Like, this is how you do a cardboard sleeve. But no, my personal pick has to be Bastille Presents Ampersand, because this cardboard sleeve feels really nice. Not the glossy card that leaves gross fingerprints or the cheap crap that withers away after a couple of years. Plus, the booklet is immaculate with handwritten lyrics, artwork, photos of collaborators, and especially my personal favourite, the unique artwork that was made for each of the tracks. I could stare at this for not hours, that's an exaggeration, but for minutes on end. It's just beautiful. Oh, sorry to get pretentious again, but I can literally hear the music while looking at the pictures. Cool. Oh, I would love a poster of that. Oh, and bonus honourable mention to Coldplay's Moon Music for being the first carbon neutral CD or something like that. The world's first eco CD made from 90% recycled plastics. I don't know how legit that is, but if they're that willing to market it, then I believe them. So anything that benefits the environment is worth commendation. The effort is appreciated, and it makes me forgive you for not releasing a physical version of the deluxe album. Oh yeah, Coldplay, Post Malone, Zayn, and Charlie XC all put out bonus albums / deluxe editions mere days after dropping their actual album, which I am never a fan of, especially when they already have a deluxe edition you can already pre-order. Yes, I'm looking at you, Charlie. It just kind of sucks for physical media collectors. But hey, I know like a lot of hip-hop artists and that like to do it, and The Weeknd does it practically every album. Okay, few more awards before we get to the EPs. Hang in there, I believe in you. Thank you for sticking with me this far. This award is an updated remix on one from last year. The Great Song Where's the Album award nominees are Privy by Nicole Louisa. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Not really a debut because I'm pretty sure they've released music before in the past. They've definitely done some remixes. So more of a comeback worthy of commendation. An awesome little rock song from a fellow Kiwi artist and friend. Man, the singer of She's a Dirtbag. Spiral by Battle of the Bands 2022 winners Dream State Empire. These funky grooves are so good, I don't know why they haven't dropped an EP or something yet. Castles is really great as well, and where's the Deficits in Detention release? Next up, it's Post Party Pepsi by Shawboy. I mean, come on. Easily one of my top 3 favourite songs of the year. In fact, the only reason it doesn't take home this coveted award is because I already know the reason why it's not on an album. It's because they have decided to leave it exclusively as a live-only track, and because they already have an EP in the works for release next year. So the award goes to The Decline and Fall by Manic Street Preachers. When the 3-disc hardcover 30th anniversary edition of Lifeblood came out, I was very excited to listen to it for the first time. But unfortunately, it was yet another one of their albums that wasn't quite what I was looking for. At least from the Manic Street Preachers. So consider my mind blown when in the middle of all the Bastille Presents Ampersand music is being released, a song with the same stylized something and something comes out that isn't by Bastille? Manic Street Preachers. I know them. I've got a couple of their albums. I like a few of their songs. Alright, I suppose I'll give this one a listen. I mean, you never know. Oh my goodness, this is one of the coolest songs I've heard all year. They straight up went and made a song that sounds exactly like it's right off The Killer's 2020 album, Imploding Mirage, aka one of my favourite albums of all time. It's nothing like I've ever heard from Manic Street Preachers before. So upbeat and pop rocky. I'm craving more. Why isn't there more? No album announcement, no follow-up single. Just one incredible song. This, combined with Post Party Pepsi and Navigating, are my 3 favourite songs of the year. Oh, wait. It says right here that there was a follow-up single, and back in October they did announce that there will be a new album releasing in January. Huh. How on earth did I miss that? And why is the other song so boring? Oh well, give the award to Post Party Pepsi then. With news of a new album that transitions perfectly into everybody's favourite award, the most anticipated music release of 2025. Obviously, Saint Motel is a serious contender, although the few singles they released throughout this year have been alright, you know. Not their best work, but still catchy enough. I still believe that they've got something real good cooking. But the real award has to be split between two of my favourite Kiwi artists. Firstly, Foley has confirmed their second full-length album, That's Life, Baby, is to be released in early 2025. I absolutely adore Foley. They are the best pop duo out there, and their live shows rock so hard. I am so pleased I got to see them live again at the start of the year. They've never put out a bad song, which is insane. And although Unstable doesn't have a radio-friendly version out yet, I hope one does manifest before the album eventually drops. Then I'll own 2 cool vinyls I can't listen to. That's a CD. And second, obviously, has to go to this mysterious second EP Shawboy are working on. Their first EP, Better, was like one of the best collections of music I heard in all of 2023. And all of these new songs that they've been playing at live shows sound absolutely incredible. Shawboy are still my go-to recommendation band for anything. Their music is so catchy and fun, I honestly believe that it could appeal to everyone. I will rep their merch till the day I die. They are quickly becoming one of my favourite bands of all time. And I am so grateful I got to appear in the Post-Party Pepsi music video. Plus, look at this adorable Christmas card they gave me. That's so thoughtful. Oh, and that's actually got me thinking about a potential last-minute award. I would call it a shout-out for Best Newcomer. I would say Budget Cucks, because they're great, but they came and went within a year. So it has to go to Danny Josie. It's suddenly gotten bright. I caught her opening for one of the numerous Shawboy shows I went to this year, and she is straight up our modern day equivalent to classic Avril Lavigne. The Avril that everybody loves, you know? Pure punk rock aesthetic. She has 3 songs out already, and they are all bangers. So please, give them a listen and watch as she rises to stardom. And now we come to our saddest category, like a real award show. In Memoriam. We lost some truly great bands this year. Not because of death, but because of life. Yumi at 6, UK's equivalent of Fall Out Boy or All Time Low, announced back in February that they were calling it quits after one final world tour, which of course means that they do about half a dozen shows in Australia and completely skip New Zealand. But the ones that sting the most are those closest to home. Pale Lady, one of our greatest rock bands, performs their final show. It's quite funny because it seemed like every time they announced that they were doing their final show, another last-minute opportunity would pop up. So I was lucky enough to see all 3 of their final performances. But when the time finally came for their swan song, it was such an epic night. I am so glad I got to be there in the front row. 2 of them left for England, while the others chose to go their separate ways. Next is MaidenName, a really cool little ethereal post-gender, not sure what that means, group from Wellington that I got to see open for Shawboy a lot throughout this year. They surprised us when they revealed that their first ever headline show on Halloween was to be their last show, which really stunk. If I had known that, I would have ditched work to go and see them. In case my boss is watching this, I am joking. Next up is Budget Cucks, winners of my Most Anticipated Music of 2024 award last year. They put out some great music, played some epic shows, then several members chose to move on with their life, going overseas to bigger and better things. Again, it was a privilege to see both of their final performances, but more so a privilege to call several of them friends. And now for the most painful one of all. 2024 took a lot from me, and one of those things was my favourite New Zealand emo rock band, Holloway. Holloway have been a massive part of my identity for several years now. Since my previous favourite Kiwi band, Openside, disbanded back in 2020, it's always been Holloway and Foley fighting for the top spot. But after moving cities to further their musical career, life decided it had other plans, and they proceeded to split up in September. I went through a lot with these guys. I went to every show I could. Heck, they were a massive part of why I moved to Wellington. Max is amazing, and I regret not getting to know him better. Louis is an insanely talented, crazy person who I'm honoured to call my friend. Taylor has grown to be one of my closest friends. He really is one of the dearest people to me, helping me through thick and thin. And while creative differences split the band apart, I will always have years of beloved happy memories. I've met so many wonderful people through them. I've gone from Insta-mutuals to genuine friends with Liam, Nico, Little Dylan, Aria, Summer, Kim, Isla, Nicole, Sam, Ethan, Skylar, Rosie, Pinky the Lizard. They've exposed me to some of my favourite New Zealand bands, or just bands in general. Dream State Empire, Pale Lady, Crying Club, The Wake Up, Catch-22, Bad Schematics, The Lost Boys, Voodoo Blue, Stray Dogs, Finger Tight, Blinder, Mirrored Walls, the list just keeps going. And from them, Scarlet Crush, Mothburn, Cherry Punch, Slow Burn, Adult Friends, Burnt Out Graduates, all thanks to Holloway, which then ties back to Open Side. That's the best way to discover new music. Going to gigs, watching your favourite local bands play live, and finding new favourites in their opening acts. Open Side led to Foley. Foley led me to Shawboy. Shawboy led me to Heart, MaidenName, Mermaidens, Danny Josie, Tahini Bikini, so many wonderful bands and artists all interconnected. I am forever grateful for them and their music, and much more than that, I am grateful for their friendship. I had to take a break to have a cry. What a year. Coming back from that heavy subject to the final award, the Please Come Back, I Miss You award is for bands and musicians who haven't necessarily stopped, but it just seems like it's been so long since they've released music. Navy, a supremely talented New Zealand artist who moved to the UK, as I mentioned earlier in this very video, and she's been busy writing for a lot of the biggest names in the industry, but when it comes to music releases, still has time to drop the occasional bop every now and then, unlike Josie Moon, who got screwed over by COVID, and then proceeded to go and find success in a completely different industry. Much like Leilani. These are all New Zealand artists, very talented, have some amazing songs, and then find success elsewhere. But you know what? Totally fair. But if they were to ever drop a song tomorrow, I would 100% be on it. Another NZ group, Seller, the remnants of Open Side. They created a band, made some cool songs, opened a burger joint, and then all appeared to disappear overseas, and that was the end of their music, which is a shame because I like their music. Taking a break from New Zealand bands and artists, the All-American Rejects. Guys, come on. You can't tease your fans with new music only to release a subpar Harvey Danger cover. The original is unbeatable, a classic. Seriously, it's been 11 years since your last album. Please make a new one. Your fans are starving. And lastly, Mumford & Sons. Look, Delta wasn't great. I've spent over half a decade trying to like this album. It's just not working. But Marcus Mumford's solo album, like I said earlier, it's really good, even if not many people listens to it. And I know you're one band member down because, well, he was a bit of a racist twat, but you've still got a lot to give. I believe in you. Blind Leading the Blind was one of your best songs. Oh, breaking news. Literally the morning I sat down to record this, Mumford & Sons uploaded a short on a lot of their social medias saying something along the lines of, hey, basically we got a new song coming out. So, yay! Mumford & Sons are coming back! Please be good. And at long last, we've arrived at my EP shoutouts. I won't do like a countdown ranking sort of thing. That's why I refer to them as shoutouts, but they are definitely worth your time. Not a lot of high-profile extended plays were released by international artists this year, at least none that I'm aware of. But some of my favourite New Zealand musicians, yeah, they were cooking in 2024. Oh, let me get comfy. I've been recording for 5 hours and the sun's going down. Of course, take your pick from the handful of Fiona Spiral EPs. My personal favourite's probably Digital Decay and Deep Space. And now I can't be bothered figuring out which Stray Kids release counts as an EP or mini album or mixtape or whatever. They're all equally as good. Okay, kicking things off with the previously mentioned MaidenName. They were fairly newcomers to the Wellington music scene. They performed some of the coolest ethereal droning sounds I'd ever heard, announced their debut headlining show to promote their debut EP, and then dipped. The Immaculate Conception EP really is the epitome of their whole vibe. Essentially, their unique sound distilled into some excellently recorded studio tracks. Nothing will compare to seeing them live, but I still get a kick out of listening to this. If they ever decide to reunite or anything, I'll be sure to be in the front row. Next up, I kinda have to mention Holloway's Final Goodbye, an EP titled The Beautifully Undead. The title referring to a line off of one of their earlier popular songs. The reason I don't rate this one higher is because it's just their 3 latest songs that already had releases and Menthol. Crush and Date All My Friends are old by this point, and If What I Think Is Happening, It Better Not Be was the only song they released this year prior to their split. And yeah, it's really good. So really, Menthol is the only new track for this release, and yeah, it's a nice, beautiful song. I remember hearing a rough demo of it a few years ago and thinking, that's really cool. So yeah, this was clearly unplanned. Me personally, I made a custom digital EP with a lot of their unreleased demos that they put up on their Tumblr, I think. It's good, but far from their best work. Wash your mouth out with soap, Lou. Now for the really good stuff. 2 of my friends / co-workers let it slip that they were in a band once. I think it would have been sometime last year, it might have even been late 2022, but either way, I managed to convince them to give it another serious shot after they performed quite well in that year's Battle of the Bands. I'm sure I'm not embellishing this story in any way whatsoever and claim full credit for their success. But no, for real, they dropped their first song, What Was It Again, and it was awesome. Subsequently following it up with their debut Death by a Thousand Cucks EP. And just look at that gorgeous album cover art by famed local artist Anna Randalls. I myself am a proud owner of several Anna Randalls originals. I'm sure they will be worth millions one day, but I shall never part with them. They are far too precious to me. Anyways, back to the music. Deliberately hard to hear vocals, or so I'm told. This is loud. This is rock. This is good. It's just good, loud noise rock. The lyrics are surprisingly introspective, contemplative, and thought-provoking, mixed in with a good dose of juvenile humour. Their live shows were a brilliant mix of fantastic, outlandish rock and roll and genuinely funny banter bordering on comedic stand-up. Later in the year, they released their final 3 songs, one of which being a half-spoken word comedic interlude sort of thing, titled Duality of Man, and in brackets, optional. And it's pretty good as well. I love the song Bart Simpson. Honestly, I'm so glad they did this. They recorded some songs, released their music, played some epic shows, and had a lot of fun while doing it. And once again, I am so pleased I was there for their final performance. I'm gonna miss you, Andre. Hope you're living your best life in Australia. Next up, one of the most insanely talented individuals I've had the privilege of seeing live twice. Multi-instrumentalist, one-man band with a band, Sam Cullen released his Love Again EP, and it is awesome. With hints of classic Kiwi radio rock like Dave Dobbin, mixed with modern musical instrumentation, and one heck of a powerful voice, this batch of 4 songs sound so damn good. Forever has been stuck in my head since I saw it live, and I was stoked it made the EP, but the big standout has to be The Cold Midwinter. He promoted the heck out of this song, and it paid off, receiving acclaim with the lads down at the local pub. But seriously, this is some great stuff, and I cannot wait for the day where I get to see him perform live with his new fully formed band, because man, that full band cover of Burnin' Down the House by Talking Heads was fire. And now, last but certainly not least, we have possibly the biggest pleasant surprise of the year. 2 EPs from some young up-and-comers. Teenage power couple Rocky of Scarlet Crush fame and Dylan, a fellow Holloway fan with an awesome first name, combined their passion for music to create Mothburn, a loud, energetic, and most importantly, good-sounding rock duet. They unleashed their debut It's Just Nonsense EP to the world, complete with a physical CD release. Take note, every band ever, it doesn't have to be professionally done. It goes a heck of a long way into building a loyal fan base. Oh, and full disclosure, I was sent these CDs for free in exchange for me promoting their band a little bit on my social media. But when I got my hands on them, I was blown away. I did more than one quick little promotional Instagram story. No, I shouted from the rooftops that this stuff is awesome. It sounded immaculate, like it was recorded in a professional recording studio. So my jaw hit the floor when they revealed to me that, no, they just recorded it all in Rocky's bedroom. All self-mixed and mastered, just outstanding. Like I said, it's good, loud, alternative rock music. 5 tracks. It makes no sense, has some of the sickest bass riffs I've ever heard. Glue is like my dream song to play on Guitar Hero or Rock Band or something like that. With fun and fast drums and guitar. My Dear is a surprisingly beautiful acoustic love song. Rotting is the song that begs for a mosh pit or a wall of death or something. Ironically, the closing track, Only Scream, which was the first song of theirs that I heard, wound up being my least favourite simply because it's just a little bit too much noise in noise rock, but it's still great in its own right. Oh, and if you think I'm done, then you should have paid attention earlier when I said CDs, as in plural, because they certainly weren't done, and they went on to release another 3-track thrasher, Belittle Me EP. After finding some surprising niche success, they came back quickly with this treat. It's so amusing to hear these young rockers create some of the heaviest stuff out there. The title track, Belittle Me, is quick, sharp, screamo goodness. Play Pretend is their longest track so far, and channels Nirvana, both the band and the feeling, I guess. And finally, Pneumonia is musically diverse, showing a shake-up in their sound, and displays their range of musical ability. Oh, that's actually their longest track. Oh, one thing I deliberately haven't mentioned until now is that on all 8 of their tracks, their vocals are on point. They both have such defined voices that mesh together perfectly. Honestly, I am dying to see them live because I can already tell it's going to be one of the most electrifying gigs I've ever been to. And that is finally it for this mammoth video. An entire album of the year list with no mention of Passenger. That's a first. Thank you so much for watching until the end. I went on a lot longer than I initially planned to, but hot damn, I just love talking about some of my favourite music. It really makes a nice change from rambling about classic Doctor Who week to week. Thank you for watching. Please leave your personal picks in the comments below. What are some other albums that came out this year that I haven't heard that I should give a go? Kendrick Lamar? Sabrina Carpenter? Laura Marling? And what are you looking forward to the most in 2025? Could it be something I mentioned, like Manic Street Preachers or Muffin Sons, or something more mainstream, like Robbie Williams or The Weeknd? As long as it's not Taylor Swift or Ed Sheeran, I would love to hear about it.